Hello viewers and welcome to the second session on producing speech sounds. This lesson is a continuation of the previous lesson. In the previous lesson, we studied the general process and overall mechanism of production of speech sounds. We also studied the organs that are involved in the process. We also studied the functions and the sub-processes that are involved in the production of speech sounds in general. Before I start with the session, let me give you a quick overview of this session. In the present session, we will study the description and production process of individual sounds, the sound system of English. Then we will also study a very basic factors that are important when we learn about the pronunciation of English speech sounds. We will begin with the International Phonetic Alphabets, which are also called IPA. Then we will go into the classification and production of speech sounds, where we will study the processes of producing vowels and consonants in British received pronunciation. Here we will study the factors that are related, that are important when we study or when we categorize or classify speech sounds in English, such as we will study the manner of articulation, the place of articulation, the state of glottis and so on. Finally, we will conclude the session by learning the transcription and pronunciation of a few English words. When we teach or learn spoken form of any language like English, we have to remember that there is no one-to-one relationship between the alphabets that we use to write a language and the sounds that we use to speak in the language. When we talk about the spelling system of English, it is arbitrary, which means there is no set pattern or there are no set rules for the spellings and the corresponding sounds in English. If we observe the letters of alphabet, if we count the letters of alphabet in English, there are only 26 letters of alphabet and there are total of 44 speech sounds which represent those 26 letters of alphabet. Since there is no one-to-one relationship between the sounds that are spoken and the letters that are written in English or in any language, we need a different system or different system of symbols which can denote the speech sounds, and we can use those symbols to transcribe the speech in a language. There is one system proposed by International Phonetic Association. It is called International Phonetic Alphabets. These are the symbols which are also called as IPA, as a short form of International Phonetic Alphabets, and these are the symbols which can be used to transcribe any speech sound for that matter. But for today's session, we will only focus on the 44 symbols which denote the 44 speech sounds in English. Let us look at the following table. I will pronounce the sound first and then I will also pronounce the word in which the sound occurs. We have first sound, which is P as in pin, B as in bin, T as in tin, D as in din, K as in card, G as in gum, Ch as in chain, J as in join, M as in man, N as in now. There is one sound which comes only finally. This is a sound, this is a nasal sound which comes only at the end of a word, like a sound in the word sing. So, in this word the final sound is a nasal sound. Then we have F as in fine, V as in van, Th as in thin, the as in then, s as in sip, z as in zip, sh as in ship, j as in pleasure. This is another sound which does not come initially. This comes only in the middle of a word, like in the word pleasure. The sound is j. Then we have h as in hat, l as in leave. In this sound, the long e is used. Then we have r as in red, y as in yet, v as in wet. So far, we have looked at the consonantal sounds in English. Now, let us look at the vowel sounds and the symbols that denote those sounds. First, we have long e as in feel, short e as in fill, a as in set, a as in sat, a as in card, a as in pot, long o as in caught, short o as in put, long o as in pool. Then we have three forms of a. The first a is cut, cut. Then we have long a like in bird. Then we have very short a like in the word account. After that, we have some impure vowels which are also called diphthongs. They are the glides from one pure vowel to another pure vowel. They are the combination of two pure vowels. Let us look at them. First, we have a as in play, we have I as in fly, we have oi as in boil, we have o as in now, we have o as in go, then we have ear as in fear, we have air as in fair, we have finally as in poor. Now, let us study the speech sounds in English. There are total of 44 speech sounds in English, and these speech sounds are categorized in two main categories, that are vowels and consonants. And out of 44 sounds, 20 are the vowels and 24 are the consonants. Out of 20 vowels, there are two categories, 12 of them are pure vowels and 8 of them are diphthongs. Let us start with the consonants first. For the classification of the consonants, there are a few factors that are important. We will look at them one by one. The first is the nature of AST mechanism, then state of glottis, the position of soft palate, place of articulation, manner of articulation or the structure involved. All the sounds in English are produced with only one AST mechanism, which is called pulmonic egressive AST mechanism. In this type of AST mechanism, the source of the air is lungs and the air comes out of the mouth. Then, if we talk about the second factor, the state of the glottis, where, as we learnt in our previous class, the glottis is the space between the two vocal cords. So, during the production of few sounds, the glottis is wide, which means the vocal cords are wide apart and there is no friction when the sound is produced. Such sounds are called voiceless sounds. But there are some other sounds during production of which the vocal cords are held together, which means there is a very narrow gap in the glottis, and when the sound is produced, the air coming from the lungs makes the friction and passes through the narrow gap in the glottis, and there is a vibration in the vocal cords in the glottis, and The sounds which are produced with such production, such mechanism are called voiced sounds. The next factor which is important in the production of speech sounds is the position of soft palate. The position of soft palate tells us whether the sound is oral or nasal. Let us know how it happens. During the production of a few sounds, the soft palate is raised, and when the soft palate is raised, it shuts off the nasal passage completely, and the air that comes out of the lungs, it passes out through the oral cavity only, and the sounds that are produced with such mechanism when the air comes out mouth only are called oral sounds. On the other hand, if this soft palate is lowered, which happens in case of a few sounds, and there is no blockage of air for the nose, and the air passes through the nose, and such sounds are called nasal sounds. And there is a third category also, apart from the oral sound and nasal sounds. In this category, the soft palate is neutral, which means it does not either blocks the oral passage or it does not also blocks the nasal passage. And during the production of such sounds, the air comes out of the nose as well as mouth, and such sounds are called the nasalized sounds. After that, we have the next factor, which is known as the place of articulation. The place of articulation decides what are the active articulators and what are the passive articulators, which means it is the space of articulation is the place where the active and passive articulators meet. There are a few articulators which are passive, like teeth, upper teeth, then we have the roof of the mouth, we have upper lip, teeth ridge, hard palate and soft palate. There are some active articulators also which move in our mouth when the sounds in English are produced. The active articulators are the tongue, the lips, then back of the tongue, then we also have vocal cords as active articulators. Then the next factor which is important in the production and classification of speech sounds is the manner of articulation, or it is also called the stricture involved in the description or in the production of the speech sounds. The manner of articulation is nothing but the way in which the air comes out of the lungs and the manner in which this air is modified to produce the speech sounds. For example, we have one manner of articulation, plosives. So, during the production of plosives, the air coming from the lungs is blocked completely, the soft palate is raised and the active articulator comes in firm contact in the passive articulator, and so the oral cavity is also closed. So, there is a blockage of air and the sound is heard when the active articulator releases from the passive articulator and the sound comes out with an explosion. So, this type of stricture or manner of articulation is called as plosive, which is produced with a stricture of the complete closure and the sudden release. We have other strictures involved manners of articulation also. We have close approximation, which gives us affricates, we have partial closure, we have lateral closure and so on. Let us now study the consonants and the description of the production of each consonants. In this section, we will study the factors that are important for the production and for the classification of the consonants. The following table denotes the consonants in English. This consonantal charts gives us the information about the various dimensions that are crucial during the classification of English consonants. Some of these dimensions are voicing, which means whether the sound is voiceless or voiced, the place of articulation and the manner of articulation. The columns in the table denote the place of articulation, the rows in the table denote the manner of articulation, and in each cell the sound which is placed towards left is a voiceless sound, and the sound which is placed to the right of the cell is the voiced sound. Let us study the 8 places of articulation in English one by one. First, we have the bilabials. The bilabials are the kind of consonants during the production of which the active articulator is the lower lip and the passive articulator is the upper lip. The lower lip goes near to the upper lip and there is a blockage of air in the mouth and the sound is produced. Because there are 2 lips involved in the production of bilabial, that is why these kind of sounds are called bilabial consonants. There are 4 bilabial consonants in English. They are p, b, m and v. The next place of articulation we have is labiodental. During the production of labiodental consonants, the active articulator is lower lip and the passive articulator is the upper teeth. So, when these sounds are produced, the lower lip makes a contact with upper teeth and the sound is produced. There are 2 labiodental consonants in English. They are f and v. After that, we have dentals. During the production of dental consonants, the active articulator is the tip of the tongue and the passive articulator is always the upper teeth. The tip of the tongue touches to the upper teeth and the sound are produced. There are total 2 dental consonants in English. They are th and the. Then we have alveolar consonants. During the production of alveolar consonants, the active articulator is the tip and the blade of the tongue. And we have passive articulators like teeth ridge or the alveolar ridge. The tip of the tongue or the blade of the tongue makes a contact with alveolar ridge and the sounds are produced. There are total 6 alveolar consonants in English. They are t, d, s, z, n and l. After that, we have post alveolar consonants. During the production of post alveolar consonants, the active articulators are the tip, the blade and the front of the tongue, and the passive articulator is usually the part of the roof of the mouth which is between the teeth ridge and the hard palate. There are total 5 post alveolar consonants in English. They are ch, j, sh, j and r. Then we have palatal consonants. During the production of palatal consonants, the front of the tongue is the active articulator and the hard palate is the passive articulator. The front of the tongue raises and makes contact with the hard palate and the sounds are produced. There is only one palatal sound in English, which is y. After that, we have velar consonants. In the production of velar consonants, the back of the tongue is the active articulator and the soft palate is a passive articulator. During the production of velar consonants, the back of the tongue raises and makes contact with the soft palate and the sounds are produced. There are total 3 velar consonants in English. They are k, g and ing. After that, we have glottal consonants. Actually, there is only one glottal consonant in English, which is h. Glottal consonants are the types of consonants which come directly from the glottis. there is no friction in the mouth or in the articulatory system, but there is a friction between the two vocal cords, and the air coming out of the lungs comes through the very narrow gap which is formed between the two vocal cords, and the sound is heard. Let us look at the manner of articulation and the strictures and how they are important during the production and classification of speech sounds. Manner of articulation represent the way in which the articulators are positioned or the way in which they shape the air coming from the lungs. They also decide the degree of friction involved during the production of speech sounds. If we consider the manners of articulation of English, there are total 7 manners of articulation in which the sounds of English or the consonants of English are produced. Let us look at these manners of articulation and the stricture involved in them one by one. The first manner of articulation we have is plosives. During the production of plosive consonants, the stricture involved is the complete closure and the sudden release. The active articulator makes a firm contact with passive articulator. There is a blockage of air in the mouth. The soft palate is raised to shut off the nasal passage. The active articulator releases from the passive articulator suddenly, and the air comes out of the mouth with explosion when the sound is heard. Then we have the next manner of articulation is affricates. During the production of affricates, the stricture involved is the complete closure and the slow release. There is only one difference between the affricates and plosives. The active articulator releases from the passive articulator slowly. Let us look at the description of the production of affricates. The active articulators makes a firm contact with the passive articulator. The air is blocked in the mouth because the soft palate is raised and nasal passage is blocked completely. The active articulators releases from the passive articulator slowly, and the air comes out through the narrow gap between the articulators when the sound is heard. There are 2 affricates in English like ch and j. The next manner of articulation we have is fricatives. During the production of fricatives, the stricture involved is close approximation. The active articulator goes very close to the passive articulator, but there is no contact between the active and passive articulator, but there is a very narrow gap that when the air passes through this narrow gap, the sounds are heard. Then we have nasal. During the nasal sounds, the stricture involved is the complete oral closure, which means the soft palate is lowered and the air passes through the nose during the production of such speech sounds. After that, we have retroflex or approximants. These are also called as trills. These are the consonants which during the production of which the stricture involved is intermittent closure or flaps, because during the production of such sounds, for example, English r sound, the active articulators, in the case of r, it is the tip of the tongue, the active articulator touches so many times intermittently to the passive articulators and the sound is heard. That is why they are called intermittent closures. Then we have semi-vowels. During the production of semi-vowels, the stricture involved is open approximation, because there is actually no friction and oral cavity is open, and these are called like semi-vowels. The production is like vowels, there is no friction in the mouth and the sounds are heard. Let us study the production and classification of the vowels in English. In English, there are 12 pure vowels and 8 impure vowels. So, during the production of all the vowel sounds for that matter, the structure involved is open approximation, and during the production of all the vowel sounds, the vocal cords vibrate and all the vowel sounds are voiced sounds. There are a few factors that are important when we classify vowel sounds. These are the height of the tongue, because the tongue raises at different heights during the production of vowel sounds. Then we have shape of the lips, because lips are either rounded, neutral or unrounded during the production of the vowel sounds. Then we also have the backness of the tongue. The which part of the tongue is raised or lowered decides the type of vowel. We have front vowels, we have central vowels, we have back vowels in English. Let us look at the impure vowels. These are the vowels which are known as diphthongs, because they are the glides from the one pure vowel to another pure vowel, and diphthongs are classified usually in two categories, like closing diphthongs and centering diphthongs. We have a few examples in closing diphthongs, like A as in play, I as in fly, Oi as in boil, O as in now, O as in go. We have some examples of centering diphthongs: ear as in fear, air as in fair, oor as in poor. After learning the international phonetic alphabets, the consonants and the vowel sounds, let us now try transcribing and pronouncing a few English words. There are a few words given on the slides. The word is teacher. So, in the transcription of teacher, the sounds involved are t, long e, ch and a. So, we pronounce this as teacher. The next word is pocket. During the production of pocket, the sounds involved are p, short o, k, short e and t, and we pronounce it as pocket. Then the third word is examination. During the production of the word examination, the sounds involved are e, g, z, a, m, short e, n. Then we have one diphthong a, sh, short a and n. We pronounce this word as examination. Like this, you can try transcribing the other words that are given on the slides as a practice. In these two sessions, we have learned the basics related to the pronunciation of speech sounds and the pronunciation of English words. I hope now you have a better idea about, a better knowledge about the production of speech sounds and the pronunciation in English. Thank you very much.